The pot of cards are a series of cards that allows the player to draw cards. And in this video, we will be going through the top 10 best pot of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! At number 10 we have Pot of Riches. This card allows the player to shuffle 3 pendulum monsters from their extra deck into their deck to draw 2 cards, with the restriction that they cannot special summon the turn they activate this card, except by pendulum summon. On surface level, this card seems pretty good as it provides some recycling as well as draw power. Until you remember that you need to get pendulum monsters first into the extra deck first, which is mostly done by using them as link, fusion, or synchro materials which will make Pot of Riches deactivatable that turn. Therefore, most pendulum decks avoid using it as it hinders them from making plays. At the 9th spot we have Pot of Dichotomy. This card can only be activated at the start of the main phase 1, and it has the following effect: shuffle 3 monsters with different types in your graveyard, to draw 2 cards, but you cannot conduct the battle phase during this turn. Similar to the previous spot on the list, this card seems good as it provides some recycling as well as draw power. However, given the fact that most decks have some great graveyard effects, by shuffling them back you are losing advantage. Furthermore, Pot of Dichotomy could only be used in the main phase 1, which makes it dead in your first turn, as your graveyard will be empty. Which made the card too slow and too restrictive to see any kind of competitive play. At number 8, we have Pot of the Forbidden in the form of a flip monster that has the effect where, when it is flipped you could choose to either draw 2 cards, destroy all spells and traps your opponent control, destroy all monsters your opponent control, or look at your opponent's hand, and shuffle 1 card from their hand into the deck. On paper these effects are all great, and some of them are ban-worthy. However, the drawback to these effects is the fact that they are tied to a level 9 flip monster which you have to build your entire deck around to be able to summon it consistently, which did a great job at slowing down the card enough to not get it banned. And at the 7th spot we have Pot of Acquisitiveness. Pot of Acquisitiveness is a quick play spell card that has the effect of shuffling 3 banished monsters into the deck to draw 1 card. It's important to mention that it could be used to shuffle the opponent banished monsters as well, which could be used to disturb the opponent plays in case they tried to interact with their banished monsters. For example, if they tried to use Levi or the Sea Dragon to summon one of their banished monsters, you could use Pot of Acquisitiveness in response to shuffle that monster to stop that monster from coming out. Or you could use Pot of Acquisitiveness to shuffle your own resources that are banished to use them again. However, most decks don't run Pot of Acquisitiveness because it doesn't provide any advantage, as it is just a card neutral with a small amount of recycling. At number 6 we have Pot of Avarice, which is a normal spell card that has the effect of shuffling 5 monsters in the graveyard into the deck to draw 2 cards. Currently most decks don't run Pot of Avarice for the same reason as Pot of Dichotomy, as it shuffles monsters that are in the graveyard, which means that they will be missing out the amazing graveyard effects of their monsters. However, previously in Zodiac format players were running Pot of Avarice, as Zodiac XYZ monsters all have the alternative summoning condition of being able to overlay them on another Zodiac monster, which means that each Zodiac monster could be used to summon 6 Zodiac XYZ monsters, which would fill the graveyard with monsters for Pot of Avarice. Then players would shuffle all the XYZ monsters back to the deck to draw 2 cards, which turned it to a pure +1 in card advantage while recycling the Zodiac monsters, so that they could be used again in the next turn. However, in the current format, there are almost no decks playing Pot of Avarice. At the 5th spot we have Pot of Duality, which is a normal spell that has the effect to excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, then add 1 of them to your hand, while shuffling the rest back into your deck, but that comes with the restriction that you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card, which seems like a big restriction. However, there are many decks that are fine with this restriction, as adding a defensive card to protect them during their opponent's turn is more important. For example, Subterror decks which revolve around flip monsters are happy with giving up their ability to special summon Witch in order to get one of their defensive cards. At the current format, Pot of Duality doesn't see many plays, mainly because of the next few spots on this list. At number 4 we have Pot of Extravagance, which is a normal spell card that could only be activated at the start of main phase 1 by banishing 3 or 6 random cards from the extra deck face down to draw 1 card for each 3 cards banished by this effect, but comes with the restriction that you couldn't draw cards after that. Once this card came out, it became a stable card for many decks that didn't really need their extra decks, as it was a +1 in card advantage. And the card is still seeing competitive play as the effect is that good. The only reason why it is seeing less play is because of the next 2 spots on this list. At the 3rd spot we have Pot of Prosperity, which is a normal spell card that could be activated by banishing either 3 or 6 cards, then excavating the same number of cards from the top of the deck, then adding 1 of them to your hand and stacking the remaining at the bottom of the deck in the order you choose, and comes with the restriction that you couldn't draw cards after that. And because of the ability to selectively add one of 6 cards from the top of your deck to your hand, this card saw tons of competitive play, as most decks played 3 copies of their best card, which gave them a really high chance of finding their main combo starter in that 6-card excavation, which made the card an instant competitive card that still sees meta plays. However, the next card might be a bit better. At number 2 we have Pot of Desires, which is a normal spell card that can be activated by banishing the top 10 cards from your deck face down to draw 2 cards. At first glance, the cost of banishing 10 cards face down seems to be heavy. However, the card is a pure +1 in card advantage, as it is easy to use and doesn't need any setup, and most importantly any deck that doesn't have limits or garnets could use it, which made it stable for a long time and still seems to play until today. And at number 1 we have the original Pot of Greed, which has one of the simplest yet powerful card texts in the game, as it allows you to draw 2 cards from your deck with no cost or restriction. Currently the card is banned and is the poster boy for banned cards. Alright, and that is the video. If you have enjoyed the content of this video, please make sure to subscribe, as I will be posting these types of content weekly, so make sure to see them first.